I'm so pleased to kick off this second session introducing the new Supervisory Council candidates. We have 9 wonderful people with us today, and I'd just like to recap the format. Every candidate will have 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and then 5 minutes for questions. Jan will use a timer to indicate the first 3 minutes and then reset it to the 5 minutes for questions. If you overrun in your introduction, it will just come off the question time. Because there's so many people, we need to be relatively strict about the time, although we won't cut you off halfway through a sentence. Every 3 candidates, we will stop for a brief plenary, and they will get the opportunity to answer questions directly from the community on us.
Well, some people tend to have very long sentences, and then I take the liberty of cutting them off anyway.
Yes, that does happen sometimes. Great. So shall we begin? Shall I explain the running order? We have in our first session, we have David, then Grace, then Robin, then Tevo, and then Nick. David, would you like to come and introduce yourself?
Yes, is the timing okay? It started. Hey everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here. I am David Tann, I'm Fly You Fools, and I am submitting myself as a candidate for the Supervisory Council. So here's a little introduction to me for anyone that doesn't know me already. I am part of this community. I am homegrown Singularity Net community member since last year. I am a fool. I am an imaginator, an innovator. I am a fool in residence and affiliated researcher at CLEA, the Centre Leopold Transdisciplinary Center. I have a startup company providing B2B creativity, enabling potentiality with the art of imagination. And in this company, I focus on facilitation. So that's using the breadth of experience as my background in the Fool, in clowning, and harnessing this to facilitate. So this is what I'm really interested to do in the 6 months term, to kind of steward this process. So why did I submit myself? Well, to be honest, at the start, I wasn't going to. However, during the process, I saw more and more candidates talk about community, and I felt someone needed to be there from the people that I know, the community that I know, that I interact with every day. And we need experts. We need people like Grace to come in. But we also need people who know this community and who are familiar with people and processes. So this is my proposal, that I am someone who asks the silly, questionable questions, the ones that no one else will ask. And this is the role of the Fool. This is the role of the court jester through history who has provoked innovation in the King's Court. And I believe it's so relevant today because it harks back to that era on some level. The innovation today is not products. Minimum viable product is now minimum viable community. And this power we can harness. And I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I love what you said about the Fool. It's fascinating, fascinating role, and sometimes a necessary one to create kind of friction and challenges. I was wondering if you, from your perspective as being internal to SingularityNet's community and very well rooted in those communities. What challenges are being experienced now within the decentralized communities of SingularityNet that you think would benefit from being addressed by the council?
Regarding the SingularityNet Ambassador Program, the main thing that I observe is purpose. People want to be involved in the community. They want to be useful. I've seen a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm from the Ambassador Program to be involved and to contribute processes, information to the Supervisory Council. But at the heart of it, the Ambassador Program is struggling right now with what is the use of an organization that gets funding that isn't necessarily needed. And I think this is really fundamental to this process. And how I can describe it is a total shift from Web 2 to Web 3 in terms of how people interact. Many questions we get asked in the community about, like, what do we do? What is the purpose? These are all completely valid questions. However, in a Web 2 organization or a hierarchical classical organization, there would be someone to ask these questions. However, in Web 3, there isn't. This is where a total mind shift needs to happen in order to self-organize, in order for this emergence to happen, where we would ask a question like this in Web 2. In a community such as this, in the Ambassador Program, it's a lot about engaging people to really interact with it in a different way, where there is a gap, to fill it, to go directly there, and not to flounder and not do anything because there is no one to ask the question. So that is, I see, the main shift, the main process that catalyzes change in individuals in the Ambassador Program, this shift in how people interact on a fundamental level.
And do you see the Supervisory Councils as providing some of that structure and focus? If I understood you correctly, you're talking a bit about kind of purpose and focus and that being a challenge in the Ambassador Program. So do you see the Council's role as providing some of that support?
Supporting it, stewarding it, harnessing that energy, and acting as a connector between these parts of the ecosystem which are already kind of developing. Which some have already developed. By acting as a connector between these parts can, I believe, really enable the potentiality of each other, of each element in this ecosystem, by developing these symbiotic processes between them.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? I have another one if there's nothing in the chat. I'm just taking a look. Okay. Okay, so I also wanted to know a bit about your particular role. You said that you were very integrated. In fact, you've been very active in the Ambassador Program. How do you see the balance between your involvement, your deep involvement of the Ambassador Program, and the new responsibility that you'd have to have on the Council?
Yeah, this is something I believe my involvement in the Ambassador Program is critical. However, there will need to be some distance between my involvement in the Ambassador Program and the Supervisory Council. I do see that as something which could hinder the process if, for instance, I'm too much. If I'm coming with the goals of the Ambassador Program, I can't be biased in this. I need to, in this process of the Supervisory Council, we need to be aware of the expectations of all the parties involved and not just the people that I come from, the ambassador program specifically. Yes. So I do believe that's it would be a weakness if I was the only one on the Supervisory Council. However, I believe it's a strength when it can be harnessed in collaboration with the others on the Supervisory Council and the task force. And thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David. And moving on to Grace. Welcome, Grace.
Oh, thank you. So I'm Grace. I've been involved in the DAO world for about 6 years, and I've been involved in technology. So it makes me sound old. A really long time, 3 decades, more than 3 decades. So I got involved in SingularityNet because I was called in to answer a few questions. And one of the areas that I feel like David just covered it, where people have been, where there's a gap is, what are we doing here? And what is the relationship between these organizations that are part of the SingularityNet, whether that's, you've got the foundation, you've got the ambassador program, you have the deep funding, and what does success look like? So a lot of times you see organizations spending a lot of time discussing the philosophy of things, and I think that SingularityNet has done a great job of defining its mission, and it's a really important mission. And in fact, it's inevitable that beneficial AI and benevolent AI will be developed, but it's also inevitable that malicious AI will be developed. And I think that the organization has not spoken enough for itself about how success looks in that environment, and what the ambassador program and what the deep funding DAO have to offer in that area. And that's where I think that a strong supervisory council is important. I tend to be someone who asks hard questions. I start with first principles, like why are we here and what does success look like? And I think that's a really important part. It's very easy for this 6-month process to end up with some sort of a document that sounds really good on paper, but isn't implementable, that we all agree upon, but like it's just nice to everybody, rather than making some of the difficult choices that need to be made. There's an infinite amount of things that this organization could do, and narrowing it down has really been the area where I think we need to make hard choices and not just always be nice to each other and speak in slogans. And so that's really where my talent lies, is not in being nice, as much as that might sound like a great talent, but it's really in being direct. Okay, look, this is actually a choice that we need to make, and some people will not be happy about it. And we can experiment. Let's try this for 3 months. Let's try that for 3 months. But actually pointing out where choices have to be made. So that's me.
Thank you, Grace. I have some questions generated by ChatGPT, which I think will be relevant. And one of the things that it came up with, which I'm going to start with because it's what you started with in your introduction. You mentioned the unintended negative consequence of AI developments, especially in the context of maximizing profit, which is something that I believe SingularityNet's trying to steer away from. What specific steps do you think could be taken to make sure that the AI developed under the DAO doesn't lead to these kinds of unintended consequences?
I think, first of all, asking the questions, right? There isn't really an ethics committee at all in this group, and it's somewhere the ambassador program could help, for example, getting away from just having technical people and having some people who understand the ethics of these things. And then testing. Again, this is an area where if you've got a large community like this group has generated in the ambassador program, let's test some things. Let's not just deploy things out on to the world. And then I think the other thing is that there will have to be tools that are safeguards. And I've given the example of, for example, I would like a little app that I put on I don't have teenagers, but when I did, my teenagers' Facebook and then my teenagers' Snapchat or whatever they were using at the time, that would protect them from some of the worst effects that those particular AIs have had on teenagers about body image and whatever. And it's not a great technological leap to create that kind of benevolent AI that's my personal protector. And I think that that's one of the areas that nobody's really talking about, and it's a perfect area for SingularityNet to think about and create tools that people would pay for that. I would pay for a tool to put on my social media that would cause me not to hate my body, or my child not to hate their body. And that's, it's very specific, and we all know that it's happening. So I think that there's both profit to be made there and benevolence to be created.
That's a great merging of the two. You can make profit and be good at the same time.
You can.
I was wondering, you've had a lot of experience with DAOs and consulting with DAOs. I was wondering, are there any common pitfalls in DAO leadership that you believe that SingularityNet in particular should be wary of?
Yeah, I think the big problem is worship of voting and worship of online platforms. One of the things that I think SingularityNet has done very well is have a lot of these actual conversations and deep conversations, and has been willing to take its time to go into these ideas in depth. And even the Supervisory Council, wow, it took a long time to actually put up a call for people to join because there was a deep conversation. And I think that that's somewhere where SingularityNet is really looking at this properly. But yeah, worship of voting is a really big problem. And people will say, oh yeah, but we're going to do quadratic voting, and we're going to do this kind of voting and that kind of voting. But voting is really, in most human organizations, used very rarely. And so I think especially when we're technical groups, we tend to look too shallowly at what that means. And voting also, when you vote for and against something, I mean, that means there are winners and losers. You know, I came to these meetings yesterday, and all the candidates are so awesome, right? But there's always going to be winners and losers. That's how voting works. And so we need to be careful, because that can create divisiveness. We just saw Nouns with their hard fork. It's like, yay, you know, forks, voting, like, right? We don't want a divided community. So we need to be careful about that.
Yeah, thank you. Just the final question, I don't know if there's enough time, but how would you recommend that a balance be struck between centralization and decentralization? Because you talk about it being on a spectrum.
Well, I think that it's like slowly, right? Slowly. And once you really know what the outcomes are and you start to trust people, I think, again, I can't answer that in 24 seconds, but let's just say this is already starting properly. It's like, okay, we're starting with an ambassador program, and then a reputation system is really crucial, right? You guys are starting to experiment with reputation systems. And when you know who to trust and what people's talents are and what the different bodies within the organization are, then you can slowly decentralize. I don't think there's a right answer to that.
Great. Thank you so much, Grace.
My pleasure.
Is Robin here? Yes, I see Robin has switched his camera on. Hi, Robin. Welcome.
Hey.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. So my name is Robin. I'm now CEO and CTO of Data Union. So it's a company about data collaborations and how many people can get involved in feeding data to AI. We call ourselves a middleware stack between private data and AI. And yeah, my origin story is from SingularityNet. So I was part of the ICO. I back then joined also the community channels. And after some time, I even got the privilege to become a moderator. And I was very involved with the community for a very, very long time until I founded my own company. And then I decided to say, okay, I have to make some compromises. And the biggest compromise I did was basically to stop being engaged so much in the SingularityNet community anymore. But now our company has proceeded rapidly in the last 2 years since we started, and we're now revenue driven. So, and I saw now that there's a new vote for the Supervisory Council. And back then I was not able to join because I had a part-time job with SingularityNet and employees were not allowed to join the vote. And so, yeah, that's why I thought I could come back with my learnings and try to help SingularityNet and be a bit of a opposition, or you always have to have some kind of a counterbalance to maybe for the company itself. I know Ben and the team for a very long time, so I think I have a grasp about what has been going on back then, and I'm really happy to learn more about what is going on now and try to get involved. But yeah, that's basically around about me. I live in Thailand now with my family, so my wife is Thai. That's why we chose to move here. So that's why times are sometimes a little bit odd for me, but yeah, that's why I'm happy everything moved more to remote in a way. And what I also did in the meantime is like I helped build an ambassador program for Ocean Protocol. Ocean Protocol also made a DAO, the Ocean DAO. It's now in this time it has been deactivated. So like they did the experiments, also grants funding, doing the token voting, as Grace also mentioned it. That's why I also think it's not the best way to do it. I had a lot of tokens. I was determining whole rounds who was getting the grants. So that is not necessarily the way it should be. It's more of an oligarchy than a democratic process. And that's why I'm also thinking a lot about, what could be other ways of giving people the right to influence something. So like whether it's a vote or not, I think the reputation system is a very important part. But for my feeling, it's like if people are really willing to put in time and their skills and their efforts into something, then they should have an influence. So like that's currently my stance, but it's also changing. So like 2 years ago, if you would have asked me, I would have said this token voting is great. Now I have learned a lot from that basically failing. In the end, there was a big disaster in this DAO. So like, yeah, it was a also forming experience. And yeah, basically I'm trying to leverage what I learned in the last 6 years in the blockchain space and in the AI space to become Singularity more decentralized and successful.
Thank you, Robin, and welcome back
Thank
to the community. Yeah, it's great that you've come back to share all of your experiences from after you left. I would like to know what experience do you bring back to the community from your time in industry?
Yeah, so I mean, like my job in the industry for AI and everything, in the AI industry, I was like first a developer. So like I developed algorithms for cars in the German automotive industry. Still, some of them are driving around the world, detecting objects on cameras and so on. I then moved on to become more of a manager, product owner. And in the end, I quit as an AI program manager in Rolls-Royce. So like I learned a lot about how to create AI systems, what is important, like the different processes, managing teams of teams and so on. So I basically took this over now also in my own company. We are a very progressive company. So like everybody's kind of a freelancer. It's in itself kind of a DAO and also not a DAO. So like we have customers now in the Web2 world, which are paying us to build systems for them. But yeah, so like my learnings from this direction is like I know a lot about AI and how to build it. And of course, SingularityNet is very advanced in what they're doing. But yeah, we got a grant now also, and we're basically building an integration now. So I'm learning also about the technical details. And yeah, this is the AI side, and in the Web3 world, I talked a lot to companies now about their strategy with Web3. We're doing Web3 adoption workshops and this kind of thing. So like I have a lot of exposure also to how the current outside, the real world feels about Web3 and AI. And so what we're doing now is like really pushing forward to do things where you don't have to have directly from the first moment control over your wallet, to make it very easy for people to get into the crypto world. Of course, later they can take more responsibility if they want to, but it's a big burden. So like we had a demo, none of my friends and my family wanted to use it because you had to make a MetaMask wallet back then. And so this is something that we eliminated. Now our apps don't ask for this anymore. You just use your email and you have then the wallet in the background, or you install an app and it's in the app already. You don't have to take care of it. Yeah, and so like basically, yeah, for the last 6 years, I've been learning and building. And I have all of this experience that I, of course, bring with me. Yeah.
Thank you. It is indeed very important to make it more accessible. in order to gather as much momentum as possible for people who aren't necessarily in crypto themselves. I was just wondering, from your experience, you mentioned the importance of bottom-up contributions and the need for more granular and diverse subgroups in SingularityNet in your candidacy application. I was just wondering what you meant by that, and how you would imagine streamlining, or maybe not streamlining, but making sure that all the different diverse groups are heard and represented in the council.
So what we did, like OpenAI also made a call for grant proposals to build a system to align their AI with like the diverse opinions of people around the world. That's where we made an entry. Unfortunately, we didn't get the grant, but basically we already put a lot of thought into this. So basically creating a mobile application, which again has this advantage. You don't necessarily have to have a wallet, but you can have one in the background, and then giving people the opportunity to form groups, to have opinions, and to then basically bring them together. Of course, I'm not claiming that this is the perfect solution, but it's already a step forward where people can bring what people bring compared to AI, their own experiences, their opinions, and they can bring them together in a crowdsourced way. So everybody who wants to invest their time and their knowledge, they can do so, and this can then also be rewarded with an influence. But yeah, this would be one of the ways I see that basically we start building, or like with the Supervisory Council, we're planning or building a tool in this direction, or planning it with SingularityNet to make sure that we can open up the whole opportunity to influence and govern the benevolent AGI in the future. That would be a big important point for me. If we don't do it today, maybe we can already plan for it, but like the important step would be, from my point of view, to really bring this into the conversation to make sure that in the end, I mean, it's a good number of people, but there are so many more out there, and how can we capture them and bring them in? That would be my mission. Yeah.
Great point. Thank you very much, Robin. We move on to Tevo now. Welcome, Tevo.
Esther, isn't it time for a plenary session right now?
Thank you for reminding me. Great. Yes, shall we take a short break to a short break in the individual sessions and open the questioning out to the community? If anybody has any questions for the three people who have been so far, that would be now would be the time to bring them up.
Just wondering if Robin has noticed what ambassador program has been doing.
I read a little bit about it on Discord, but I did not get too involved. So like, I don't know. I mean, like, I know that you guys are running a lot of meetings and so on. So I think that's really awesome, and that you are engaging with the community. And I saw that there's now a lot of expert groups. I also, people are applying to them, and this is all getting formed. So I really like this a lot, but I'm not a member yet. So like, maybe I should look more into detail into it. Yeah.
Well, I'll ask a general one then. What is the one thing that shouldn't be forgotten in the blueprint?
And we'll let everybody answer that one.
For me, the most important thing that shouldn't be forgotten is the procedure by which it can be changed. I think, if you look at just something really simple like the US Constitution, it's just so hard to change it, and it's so outdated. And I'm not saying it's a bad document, but I think we need to have, especially in this experimentation stage, multiple different ways to change things at different scales about the meta governance of the organization.
I would say differentiate default state and experiments. So it's like clear distinction between this.
I think recognizing that we're in a decentralized context that's ultimately a crypto economy. So we're trying to build mechanisms that create new ways of coordinating through the tools that we've got, and one of those is how token economics works with this, and how the decentralization aligns with the value capture of the whole system.
It would be great to also have David and Robin's feedback on this. Yeah.
Yeah, from my point of view, it would be very important how the monetary value and the influence, how they are going to be aligned and how this is going to work out. I really would be very careful not to create an oligarchy in this case. So like that would be very important for me, because it's been one of the learnings from the past that this really does not work out well.
I would say the mechanisms, the feedback loops for orientation, for alignment between different groups, a bit like how Grace said, the fact that we are setting up in a way a blueprint as a process of development, of change, of growing. So in a way we can enable this emergence to emerge.
What is your favorite topic that you're looking forward to discussing with the community?
My favorite topic is like how could we involve them more? How could we connect them more to the emerging AGI? That would be my favorite topic to discuss with the community.
Favorite topic is, how do you know that you're succeeding in the mission? Like, what are the measures that you're going to be looking at?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? My Wi-Fi is a bit off today.
What's your favorite topic that you're looking forward to discussing with the community?
The things that they're not comfortable sharing in a public sphere. Yeah, I think that.
I'm really interested in what brought them here. Why this project? Out of all the projects in crypto, what is it that brings them here? What are their dreams and passions about, and how do they align with this project? Where do they want to see it go?
Thank you, everybody, for the first segment. I'm really enjoying the discussion so far. We need to move on now to the second session, or second half of this segment. Tevo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Maybe. I'm Tevo, and I've been exploring this like community and decentralized environment for a few years now, and I found like a challenge, like how do you create like this crazy collaboration or like global governance or anything like that is sound impossible in very previous years where there wasn't blockchain technology. I wasn't aware of that. Then it felt like this is unsolvable, but now when you know that you can transfer value or a trust over these bits and bytes, then it's like, what can we build based on that? And that kind of steered me in this kind of environment, meeting people who know these topics, they are experts in these areas, and that kind of gave me self-courage and basically interest to explore, and basically curiosity, like how can you then create this connection with people to build these kinds of systems, because I'm a little bit of technical person and like thinking in numbers and and options. So it's like, it's just fascinating. And somehow through these years now I'm ending up in this Singularity Net, and that's why I'm also in this kind of this call where people are putting themselves up to create this framework and put their lessons and experiences into the paper, make it something that you can follow and easy to adopt. And this is why I'm here, and basically that's what I do, and that's why like system designing, thinking about these kinds of nuances, and I like about what others are saying, where David is bringing more of these like ethical discussions, like what we should consider, where Grace likes to like know which of these questions we need to answer, where I maybe just kind of, hey, bring everything in, let's automate it later. But there are technically some points that maybe are more important. And yeah, I like just to think about that and create like graphics or like, yeah, all of these options available and visible to all the people who are working on the blueprint. And even if I don't get voted, I will still be here. So that's also a good thing.
Thank you, Tevo. Like David, you offer a very valuable perspective, being in the kind of grassroots element of the ambassador program, and also I believe in Cardano Catalyst Swarm, right? I was just wondering if you have this deep experience, very close to SingularityNet. Can you reflect on what the biggest challenges are at the moment for the decentralized communities you've seen here?
I would say right now, most of the people who join and are here haven't yet learned a common language, and that's like normal, because it took me at least 6 months to even understand how do I onboard or educate others on what I'm doing or what others are doing, and that just takes a lot of time of these interactions. And right now there isn't like a clear-cut guidance too that you just go through and read. Okay, this is how you are like communicating with each other. Although as more you spend time, you will find out like multiple frameworks. So it's like, I guess the challenge is just it's hard.
And on a connected issue, you were talking about there's no common language. I find that a very interesting turn of phrase, because people bring different backgrounds into the decentralized setting. How would you make sure that the different voices in the community are heard and incorporated into the blueprint?
Yeah, so the way I have liked the approach also that we're experimenting Ambassador is where people share their skills, and what I also, this is just my perspective, but I reflect what I do in time, and those who have found it kind of useful, they also reflect their skills and passion in time, so they are a bit measurable. But what you do is you measure yourself against the way you are kind of training, and so you do this for your own sake, and through this is like one perspective of how can you do stuff, and then you are more articulate, like in over the lifespan of how are you improving and adding to the core. And if more people do similar things or add this information as like a track record, then I feel like that could be used. And that was something that also Robin mentioned, where you basically you do it. It's like a meritocracy, but it's also a bit of it doesn't tend to get into oligarchy too, where you just look at one merit. So you need to just have like an open view for everybody to see how all this collective knowledge is kind of getting into. And over time, I will believe that we are building tools to visualize and understand this. And especially that's why I also like this SingularityNet spaces. We are working on AI, and right now the AI is getting more and more smarter to consume this large amount of data. So yeah, just having like tracking your stuff in a readable format and making it shareable, and like using these whatever small standards we are able to make between other and quantify our learnings.
So you see a strong role for tools in this aspect of the council. I wanted to know what do you see? What do you bring from Swarm? What learning do you bring from Swarm to the decentralized community of SingularityNet? What does your experience tell you?
That there are a lot of people who are actually interested to to help this come true, and they will put aside their financial requirements to further the cause. It requires a consistency to create these spaces, but that's like the most amazing thing was to create these spaces where people can come together, share what they know, share what they want to see, share how can they get to there, and then this and just basically pass on that knowledge of how did we create these little successes, and that kind of made it happen that now there are just several groups, and with each of them have their own small communities, and that's just amazing. And you can reuse that kind of that platform and like, connecting.
Thank you very much, Tevo, for sharing your insights. Let's move on to Nick. Nick, would you like to introduce yourself? Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to sort of come sort of pitch for this. So, a bit of background on me. I'm a physicist by background. So I was an experimental physicist for several years, and then moved through maths and cryptography, which is where I discovered Bitcoin. And then ultimately fell in love with sort of learning theory and organizational design. And I've been working in decentralization for 10 years. I was building decentralized organizations in an institutional context, and became just completely convinced this is a profoundly important thing that we should be working on as a civilization. We've gone crazy with centralization, and the centralized structures of governance all over the world are fragile and failing. So yeah, in sort of 2 minutes, I think I decided to come up with like 3 statements that I think tell you a little bit about what I believe in. First one is DAOs will change the world. I think we've basically on the brink of working with a new set of tools that will allow us to drive forward decentralized organization. I think we can build new and interesting reputation systems, that we can build on-chain meritocracies that beat that plutocratic problem we're talking about, and we've seen DAOs blow up on one coin, one vote. I think people have got slightly bearish on them at the moment, but they remain the most important mechanism in crypto. And that's what I work on. I'm CEO of a company called Factory Labs that's building DAO infrastructure, and I'm trying to build a kind of platform for human coordination that leverages these tools. Second statement is the voice of the community matters more than anything. Several years ago, I built sort of mechanism inside an institution, inside a university, for genuinely integrating student voice into institutional policy, called it a university conversation. And we created policy documents that were genuinely written by the students and all the stakeholders across the university, and it worked. It was just really, I've seen it firsthand how genuinely participatory approaches to governance can genuinely move things forward. And I think the project we're working on here can really push forward the entire crypto space. I think decentralizing the organization outside of not just central DAOs is a really ambitious project and an important one. The third one is working on decentralized AI is probably the most important thing in the world that we can work on at the moment. I'm deeply worried by the way that the AI world is shaping out at the moment. There's 3 or 4 global players who are all trying to capture global governance in order to maintain their moat. I think they're aggressive, and I think they're a real danger, actually. They will value extract, and they will be essentially the new oracle of truth. So decentralized AI and the broader project of Singularity Net here is perhaps one of the most important projects out there. So I'm just super keen to be involved in that and help in any way I can.
Thank you, Nick. As you were speaking, I was wondering something that I've been wondering for a while. Which is that progressive decentralization is a very different process from creating a new decentralized organization from the ground up with its own challenges. I was wondering if you could comment on that.
Yeah, so I sort of realized this firsthand when I was trying to shift the organizational practices of a university many years ago. And there's only two older organizations than universities. It's the military and the church. So they have these entrenched hierarchies with professors at the top and layers of hierarchy. And disrupting that's very, very difficult. So you build parallel systems. Much of what we're talking about in crypto is building like parallel systems, alternative systems to the main one. So we can build up like sort of tangential structures that can be very community centric and can take risks and do things that are different from conventional structures. And then we find things that bites and works. We can start to swap out elements of the main structure to those tangential structures. So it can be quite dangerous to upend an existing structure. So really it's about finding things that work in that context. Organizational design is very contextual. What will work here will genuinely only work here, potentially, because it's very a nuanced and context dependent thing. So it's about practice. It's about getting our hands dirty, doing the real work, the real politic of decentralized organization, and doing things in iterative practice and getting our hands dirty and getting the job done.
Thank you. So I understand what you say about the importance of context. So context definitely matters. But I was wondering if you see anything coming up, or if in your experiences you've seen any themes coming up as common challenges across different contexts.
Yeah, I think that it's funny that the common problems are ones that are found everywhere, from global governance down to DAOs, that are just the same human issues that you see everywhere. So it's aligning incentives in such a way that it's ultimately, and particularly in DAOs, people will operate from a kind of self-interested position. They're almost in this kind of adversarial sort of notion, but that's the same in real world politics, right? So, but what we can do is build systems that align the desires of people genuinely. So it's about building alignment so we can direct that energy into a central goal. So a lot of these things can be sort of wormed out by designing and aligning what we all actually want, building social consensus through diverse means. Voting is a great way to get data from vast amounts of people, and that's why it's a very central component of decentralized organization. Probably always will be, but it will be used alongside these other new and interesting mechanisms for shaping and curating. So one of the main issues is that everyone can have a voice, and that changes the dynamic, and that's brilliant and democratic. But what you're missing is the curation. So we fall prey to this tyranny of structurelessness, where whoever shouts the loudest, who has some kind of tacit influence, can have an overweighted influence on everything. So really what we need to do is make sure that we're capture resistant, that we can build in genuine emergent voices through curation mechanisms, by allowing these kind of filtering and allowing good ideas to float to the top, and not toxic ideas or ideas that are just pump the token or something like that, you know. So we need to find the good ideas and action the ones that are generally champion the ones that come directly from the community.
And how do you strike a balance between letting the good ideas float to the top and censorship or kind of power-based curation?
Yeah, that's really the kind of holy grail question, actually. I think I'm one of the things I tried. People talk about governance minimization, like Bitcoin is a governance minimized DAO, essentially. And then on the other end of that spectrum, you've got governance maximization, where all we do is talking shops. We're just talking all the time. All we do is meetings and nothing ever happens. And what we've got to do is find this iteratively. So it's a discovery process. We've got this kind of explore and exploit mechanism where we need to throw out broad nets and bring in as much voice as possible, and then discover ways in which that we can find the gold dust that's in there. And I think leverage the collective intelligence that's available. So yeah, it is a balance, but I see it as an iterative process. We need to go really broad and emergent and let the chaos in, and then draw back to structure and form, and reify the good stuff into policy.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thanks.
I've noticed that we are a bit early because we have fewer people today per session. I was wondering, should we break now for a few minutes, or
No, I would just continue with one of the three people that are here, and then we have a nice set of three again, and do a plenary session after. If
I've also
Rafael or Curtis are willing, or Carlos. Sorry?
Oh, I was wondering whether Curtis would like to go or is prepared to go now for this session. Great, thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself, Curtis?
Thank you, Esther. Yeah, so my name's Curtis Myers. I actually share many of the same accomplishments and experiences as many have shared here. So I'll try to brief through that part. I have 20 years experience in technology, 4 years as a leadership role. I'm a co-founder of Decipher, where we've designed a community as a service platform for governance frameworks, communication tools, business model insight, AI assistance, reputation services, and a lot more. I got involved in as many decentralized communities as I possibly could about 3 years ago when I discovered the Cardano community, and it's a wonderful community. Catalyst, Gimbal Labs, Snaprilia, SingularityNet, C4C, Swarm, Odin, etc. What I find most interesting is that these skills and experiences are not valuable alone. It is the intent in which each of these initiatives began that I enjoyed the most. The why is very important to me, and I loved exploring all these communities and discovering their whys. I'm passionate about the topics being discussed in these spaces like sociocracy, holacracy, polycentric governance, decentralized governance, AGI, and community abundance. I integrate that insight while conceptualizing solutions. I would like to discover how these experiences can be utilized by the community to bring value to the future of SingularityNet. And I'm here as a pioneer and a conduit for the community. So I'd love to see the community taking full advantage of that for their benefit. And I'd also like to ask a question at some point of the community itself. And I don't know that this is the place. Yesterday it was a bit more people involved of the community themselves. So that's it for me. I'll leave the rest for questions.
Thank you. I was wondering, given your extensive experience with the Cardano ecosystem and the other many decentralized communities that you've been part of, what are some of the best practices that you think would be really useful to bring to the SingularityNet decentralization process?
I think many of them are actually already underway that we're seeing. I mean, Swarm's introducing a lot of these practices that they've learned through their experiences. And I'm starting to see it. You mentioned earlier, Esther, in one of your questions about how do you progressively get decentralized versus establishing in the beginning. And I personally, that's the model that we took with Decipher. You can start out with the initiative. Usually it's one person, 3 people, whoever those co-founders are. They begin the vision building and they understand what is the set of values that they are bringing to the table, establish some form of structure, and then create a stage for the community to engage with it and interact with it. And as Nick mentioned as well, allow those ideas surface to the top. I think that by having a vision or a culture or a set of values, it allows people to pick and choose where they feel that they fit in, where they feel that it aligns with their set of values. And that sort of creates that community. So you can understand your community a little bit better and build out some of those practices and processes along the way. Another thing I'm seeing that SingularityNet is doing is designing documentation that the culture can align around and discuss, and they all get to contribute whether or not they see it that way as well. So establishing initial engagement interactions and a culture surrounding that, I think is actually very it's required. It's very critical that people know how to engage with each other. And to me, that's about that context that was mentioned before. It's providing a context for what these interrelationships look like and what to expect from those types of interactions.
Could you expand a little bit on what you mean by create the context? How would you go about doing that?
I feel like that's what's kind of happening right now. We have the code of conduct, the conflict resolution documents being established. That's the context. It's where we're saying when we engage with each other, this is what we expect. We expect this type of code of conduct. And when something comes up, this is the process that we're going to follow through if there's a conflict. And to me, that's orienting around context of how do we engage and what are our interrelationships.
In a way, that's what you're talking about is the establishment of boundaries. So I wondered how do you see the tension between the immense creativity of boundarylessness and the kind of boundedness that is necessary to create a stable community?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the beginning of that question?
Sorry, I know it's a hard question. So you were talking about the code of conduct and this kind of context setting, and in a way that's about setting boundaries, isn't it? So where the community feels safe and secure because of those boundaries. So how do you navigate the tension between the boundedness of creating rules but not creating rigidity, because there is a certain power in boundarylessness as well, which is the strength of decentralized communities?
Yes, it's quite the challenge, isn't it? I think part of that is a lot of time friction comes from a particular party in the conversation feeling unheard or that they weren't listened to. And so they will tend to create that tension purely because they just didn't feel that they were being heard. So one of the attributes that we can overcome that with is a system that does allow everybody to speak their voice. Like Nick mentioned, the voices is very important. So if we can aggregate the community's input and give them that sense that everybody has been heard or it's been discussed and it wasn't just chalked off the whiteboard, I think a lot of that tension will get reduced. And then having practices when there is tension, what does need to be surfaced? Because if we surface every tension that arises, it'll probably be nonstop. However, we need to make sure everybody is feeling heard. So if there's enough motive or motivation to push that tension towards the surface, there should be mechanisms in place in which anybody in the community can do that and have their voice being heard.
Thank you, Curtis. And thanks for speaking at the last minute in the first segment. Shall we open for plenary so that the last three speakers can answer general questions? I believe that Felix posted something in the chat. We have 26 candidate applications. However, the community will elect 3 of the candidates for the council, meaning that we'll end up with 3 winners and 3 losers. What would be your immediate actions as one of the few winners to turn the many losers into winners?
I would create an extended council, say like also the people who were not elected will have a voice and can influence the result. I mean, what they intended to do initially, right? So, and that would be a way that we can them together. I mean, like everybody here has excellent points. Would be bad if they could not influence the final result that we are creating. I mean, in the end, it should be relying on everybody's opinion. So that would be my proposal.
I think we're especially interested in the last 3 people, Tevo, Nick, and Curtis' opinion on this question. But thank you, Robin.
It is. There's like Grace mentioned earlier, there is always losers in these things, right? And the reality of it is we might have to deal with losing those people. So you've got the 3 winners. It's a careful selection process. But yeah, I think there's mechanisms for bringing in that wider party. Sometimes they're called legitimate peripheral participants. They're going to be people at the periphery. How do you gain the incentive alignment with those agents and the project? So if you did actually want to broaden out to a wider group, and actually we've just happened to collect 23 amazing or 26 amazing people, and we want them all to be here because they've self-selected themselves, is there a slightly wider boundary that we can draw that creates an extended set, and maybe there's a way to have a broader group that is some kind of peripheral structure to the Supervisory Council if we actually wanted to bring them in.
Yeah, not adding too much to that. Supervisory Special Forces. It would be a work group name that would be started.
I also believe, I mean, the hope too is that the candidates that didn't maybe make it this time become the next generation of the Supervisory Council. So how do we keep them engaged, and how do we keep them involved with this process and informed about what's happening so that they can contribute in that next session, is a thought that comes to my mind. And the Supervisory Council themselves won't have the time or the capacity. I mean, if we're being honest, and from experience watching other decentralized groups, won't have the time to actually do a lot of the things that need to get done. How can we leverage that extended circle of all the candidates that applied here? Is that through proposals? Do they help design and build out proposals that get submitted that the Supervisory Council can vote in and execute, so that we can get them? And those are involving conversations with that extended circle.
I think this is actually talking about a wider question of hierarchicalness that we're building into here. There's people who are paid and there are people who aren't. So most of the people running to this point have been working either as a volunteer basis or for some sort of small stipends, or some part of what the DAO might be able to provide. And then it's all good and fine to say, well, if I'm the winner, I'm gonna ask the other people who didn't win to come and volunteer their time for free. Well, that's easy to say, but who's going to want to do that? And so I think we need to be cognizant that we are building in a hierarchy with the Supervisory Council and the task force, and the task force that there is a budget for that. So that's a way to bring in some of these people, and many of us have applied to both. But I think we do need to be very cognizant, again, of this, plutocracy, and of who has the money, and, also conflicts of interest. I had noted that also to a few of you behind the scenes, that the way that the Supervisory Council is being funded puts a downside on it if the token goes down, but no upside if the token goes up. So you've already created a Supervisory Council that doesn't have an interest in having the token rise. Well, that's really a weird conflict of interest. And so I think we need to talk about these things openly. Like, who's getting paid, who isn't getting paid, how much is that, and what kind of inequalities we're creating before we get all gung-ho about, hey, let's create this sub-council that is not funded, of people who are going to volunteer. And I'm not saying I have a solution, just be open.
Yeah, I think I think it's important to recognize this is actually a privileged position. And consequently, at some point, it needs to disappear. So I think one of the things it should be thinking about, what is the end game for this council? Because ultimately, if we achieve what we need to get done, then it's no longer necessary.
Thank you very much for. Sorry, Tevo, do you want to offer a last comment before we move on?
Yep. In this situation, I think we can steal some experiences what we have in piloting in ambassador program, where work groups do get rewarded. They themselves decide how it's fair given the budget, and at least we have some budget, and in the end we all kind of here to create this like amazing blueprint. So I'm quite optimistic that most of us who are elected are going to share the treasury.
Thank you to everybody who's been speaking so far. I would like to take this opportunity to open the second session. And just to recap, everybody has 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves, and then we will open 5 minutes of questions for each candidate after they have spoken. the running order for the second session is Daniel, Guillermo, Rafael, Carlos, and that's the end, I believe. Yes. So I would like to welcome Daniel. Hi, Daniel.
Hey, thank you for having me. So should I just go ahead with the introduction then? Yes, I see the timer going. So for those that don't know me, Daniel Ospina. I come from an organization design background. Mostly I spent the last decade obsessing over the future of work, going through experimental psychology, research and development, innovation management in the high-end food industry, etc., self-management, cybernetics, systems thinking, all of that, and ending up in Web3 around 2017, getting obsessed with DAOs, and that's how I made my way in. Then by 2021, started to consult for the folks at Aragon, helping them to integrate to a company they had acquired and bringing that together. And then they offered me a position as head of governance and spend the rest of 2021 helping to figure out how to decentralize Aragon or launch a DAO and make that transition and pass some power from the foundation to the community, while as well working with the product team, thinking how the technology to manage DAOs should evolve. After that, I left and started R&DAO with some other people, seeing that there was a lot of fragmentation in the space and that a lot of the things I had seen in my earlier career across Web2 and different communities interested in politics, organization design, management, etc., that a lot of those learnings were not really present in Web3, and there was a lot of reinvention of the wheel. And when I was in research and development, the biggest lesson I had seen is that some of the most powerful innovative ideas come when different disciplines and different mindsets come together. And this doesn't happen just through a quick superficial conversation, but actually when these people spend loads of time together until the mental model of each person transforms and expands to include some elements of the other domain. So through that experience, I become a really, really big believer in bringing different disciplines and different expertise together in a space that is intentional and where we can create the time for that to emerge. So I started R&DAO trying to facilitate that and take a more collaborative approach, like cross ecosystem, sharing knowledge, bringing all of those different insights into the blender, and seeing how then going quite deep, we can start to crack some of these super complex and wicked challenges of human collaboration. Then more recently coming across SingularityNet, etc., I met Esther and Michaela in a couple of occasions, and I really, really like the ecosystem. I feel there is a lot of value alignment and a lot of potential here. So here I am interested in exploring that further.
Thank you, Daniel. I was reflecting as you were speaking about the value in the deep interaction that you're describing, and how it's a great way to get this kind of diversity into the conversation and really kind of develop the understanding of each other and the development of ideas. I was wondering though how it's very kind of time intensive, that sort of process. So if it takes place within a decentralized organization, how do you see that scaling?
So when I was working in food R&D, after we discovered the pattern, essentially we started to track how did the biggest, most influential innovations came about. And what we discovered they had in common was usually a friendship in between someone very influential in the organization and someone from the outside who had a shared passion or a shared interest. So there was some level of common language that allowed these people to come together. Now, this was a centralized organization. And then the person who was usually the one who had been doing this had become insanely busy, a big TV celebrity, etc. Didn't have time for anything. So didn't have time to keep on doing this process. And there was a crisis of new ideas in the organization. So we tried to reproduce this process without relying on the decentralized person, on the single influencer. And what became apparent is that one of the biggest challenges is you can have new ideas, but then how do you convince the powers in place that these ideas should be experimented? And so being able to create sandboxes becomes really, really important. If you have those sandboxes, if you have then the possibility to do it, you can actually decentralize the process a lot. And over the next 2 years that I was working in that place, a lot of what we did was also trying to engage people from the different business units. So this was a company that had an R&D lab, and then different business units where usually innovation happened in the R&D lab, and then it was pushed and almost forced onto the business units. So we tried to reverse that process and instead get the people from the business units to start engaging with us a lot sooner. So instead of giving them finished ideas, we'll give them unfinished ideas. And on the other side, we then try to extend what we're doing and to try to connect with universities, academics, and other people and invite them. So we usually do thematic springs. We'll get someone in the R&D lab who had a passion that had nothing to do with food, so outside the domain of expertise. They would do a little bit of in-depth research, present that to us. Ideally, then we would connect with 1 or 2 other people from that domain. And then all together, we'll start to spend some time starting to think about translation and being like, okay, what can we learn about the patterns or these ideas, trying to go a little bit meta. So abstract it away, and then what can we apply for us? And have the space to prototype, like the sort of sandbox. So this was again in food. So it's like, can we order some food and just quickly try an experiment and the next day eat it? And the faster those feedback loops could be with very low key experimentation and not trying to crack a big problem. Like, we're not trying to create utility for users or anything like this. Here, we're just experimenting with the ideas and reducing the risk and the time it takes to do that and the friction it takes to do that, while enabling, well, a bigger team to play around with it and being very transparent and starting to talk about it with the people from the business units and being like, oh yeah, we're thinking about that, what ideas come to your mind? And so we turn it away from being this process that was happening between 2 people to a process that is more happening with the network, but all of us evolving one theme at a time and trying to go deeper into that, and then sieving and filtering through the ideas one after the other to see then what kind of comes about. So I would take some inklings from that of how it can be done at a bigger scale, and then you could parallelize and have different communities who are at a given point exploring different topics, 2 or 3, but not trying to do too much. The importance is kind of like the continuity and opening up an innovation space rather than looking for a single innovation.
Thank you. Do you perceive any major challenges for SingularityNet specifically?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the challenge, or something that had been a major challenge for us in Aragon and is as well in SingularityNet, is that as SingularityNet has been doing this great process with deep funding, etc., and trying to, and with Swarm, etc., that there is this sort of mycelium coming up and creating a decentralized community bottom-up. On the other side, there is a centralized organization that is somewhat permeable and separate from this. Now, both need to mature and evolve in tandem so they can over time become more compatible. But getting both to evolve is tricky because the centralized organization also has operational responsibilities. So it can be tricky to prioritize enough that and doing it so they can align and there is no conflict as a result without anyone freaking out because it's moving too fast. It's kind of like a tricky process, but really important to manage well.
Yes, one of the quintessential challenges of progressive decentralization, like we were discussing before. Thank you for your insights, Daniel.
Thank you.
Guillermo, welcome.
Esther, hi everyone. Nice to finally meet you, Esther. I've been reading a lot of your work lately.
Oh, thank you. Good to meet you, Guillermo. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, my name is Guillermo Lucero. I'm from Argentina. I'm 50 years old with a 20-year-old spirit. I have been involved with SingularityNet since deep funding round 2, first town hall, and I have never heard of it before, and or from the visionary people behind it. Since then, it has been difficult for me to stop being interested. The intellectual and cultural exchange is on the highest level. And I must admit that outside the SingularityNet, I get bored, pretty much. Since then, it has been amazing experience. I'm an architect. I have a degree in urban sustainable development. I have a bachelor in communication and specialized in digital transformation. And since 2017, came back to Argentina to lead a project, Energía Social, that is a renewable energy social business. It's focused on building social, sustainable, long-term solutions through the integration of technology. It has been difficult for us not only to survive in a shrinking economy, in a country without rules and laws here. The gravitational law in Argentina is like things fly, don't come down. Not only that, the hardest part, which we are very proud, is that we have kept ourselves in the forefront of innovation. And that's something that we are very proud of. I strongly believe, as is represented in the proposals we have been participating in round 2 and round 3, that AI and blockchain technology will have to mitigate the biggest challenge we have as a global community. And it's just we are seeing in SingularityNet just a sample of these applications with precision agriculture proposals, climate modeling, warning system for natural disasters. This is a great opportunity for technology to have a concrete and tangible, bring in concrete and tangible solutions for community. Most of all, we personally love the purpose behind the platform. So it's not only noble, it has a strong purpose and meaning. The AGI vision is something that is need to be for all, and I stand behind that. That's why I'm here today.
Thank you. You're right that we're dealing with and hoping that AI will evolve to deal with some of the more pressing global challenges. I was wondering if you can reflect on how we can expand conversations about things like sustainability and ethics and so on, and sustainability to countries that might not necessarily be having that much of a voice at the moment.
Well, putting our ideas out. I think we discussed for the last year. Well, I personally believe in what I do. I'm old, so I don't do nothing that I'm not 100% into it. With Jan and the whole team, we have been discussing, I personally see energy as our main resource with time. So those are two lines that we need to be focused on. And we are pursuing a technology that is going to drain a lot of energy. We need to use this technology to balance its outcomes. So that's where it comes to sustainability. It is a mathematical word, It's not an ecological word, sustainability. It's something that is embedded in resources. You can translate it to money. Money comes from trees. Everything is linked in this behalf. So I believe that we can't just use this technology for gaming. We have bigger challenges than that, and this is in our responsibility. At the end, it is about the commitment and people behind the ideas. It's all about the people behind the ideas. You can use an axe to build, or you can use the same tool to destroy. So it's simple. We repeat on the same subject, the people that are involved in this area. So I think that there are too many good ideas on the table that need to be developed. And at the end is the people that decides, where the resources go, and well, that will bring an outcome, and we'll see where it takes us from there.
thank you. You have been with SingularityNet for some time. Can you comment from your perspective what you see as being a key challenge for SingularityNet and its decentralization process?
Okay, so I can't give an answer for that without getting some of people here present involved. I think that we all, as one organ, we have been challenged by decision making. We have been challenged by being able to onboard the ideas and to have concrete results. And again, I'm going back to time and energy. I think one of the challenges we have with the idea that is represented by blockchain and decentralization, that is just an idea, that is the result of technology application, that is blockchain, needs more compromise. I presented in governance round 2 a proposal for verified profiles because I believe the challenges we are presenting, we are having is that we can apply the good ideas that we have. For example, Juana's idea for contribution for community rewards and having a reputation system. You can apply that if you don't have a verified profile at the end. We are seeing that problem today in the round 3 swipe platform. Even though it's a simple thumb up, thumb down, you can control the system. So I believe, as I wrote in the proposal with the music analogy, and Jan, we have the same. I'm sorry to use these stupid metaphors, but they are simple to explain things. I think I wrote about a progressive jazz fusion band playing. It's simple. You have the theory of chaos playing live on a real time with 5 talented creative individuals that have a simple and concrete outcome. That's music, represented here with music. But they are playing with parameters. They have a simple system that with criteria doesn't only come with music. Rules of engagement needs this structure. So that I think that's one of the biggest challenges we are facing right now. We need to put the ball down to the ground and for being able to use these amazing tools.
Thank you very much, Guillermo, for sharing your insights. Are we doing, shall we just continue to Rafael, are you here? Oh, great, I see Rafael.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rafael. I'm an economist. I've been working in the startup world for the last 5 years. And besides that, I've been in crypto since 2020, but I don't want to focus too much on myself. I want to focus in what I can do, what I can bring here to this council member election and as a council member to the community. And that's basically making sure that the voice of the community will be heard. If you read my proposal, that's what I'm focusing on. That's what I want to do. And to do that, I want to create several spaces where the community can come and talk, share their ideas, even send me directly messages. But more than that, I have like discussion spaces across different time zones, different languages, such as English, Portuguese, and Spanish that I can do, but also collaborate with other individuals from the community to have other languages, and especially like the SingularityNet ambassadors, and to have people talk about these topics. And on my side, I have a YouTube channel, and I think that can be very useful to break things down into these complex concepts into simpler things, to have more participation from every individual. I think that will be very important throughout the process. And throughout the process, I also want to leverage this channel or even the SingularityNet YouTube channel to keep the community informed about what's going on in the development of the blueprint, in the development of what we are doing for this income DAO, because that will be important for the community to be able to participate at any point in time and say, this is not going in the way we want to do some changes. Okay. Besides that, I think I am capable of organizing these governance discussions because I've been involved in governance in several different ecosystems, from Cosmos ecosystem, Polkadot, OpenGov, Cardano Catalyst. Now I'm on deep funding round 3 as well. And besides that, I've been involved in Cardano governance. Cardano is currently developing its governance roadmap. I've participated in some virtual workshops for the MVP of governance, which I think will be very relevant here, and to organize these workshops. And also, I'm developing a DAO myself right now, a DAO for marketing, education, and content creation on Cardano, and currently developing a governance roadmap. So starting from what would be the ideal decentralized governance, and then creating the path from the MVP until that ideal stage. And I think that project, overlaps a lot with what we're doing here. So I think in that we get a lot of synergies from the research I'll already be doing. So that's basically it. That's what I want to do, make sure the community is heard, and that what the community thinks and believes and the values are discussed in this task force and hopefully reflected in the blueprint. Thank you.
Thank you. When you were talking about bringing community together, I really liked the idea of many discussion spaces. How do you envisage handling things like friction or very divergent opinion or very divergent, let's say, motivations between people?
I think that's really positive. That's what we want from the beginning. We want to see everything that can go wrong, all the divergences, all the discussion, and see how we can get these clashes and create an environment where there is respect and where we can share different ideas, where people also maybe have a space inside the community to test their ideas, to learn from other ecosystems and see how some of the ideas work, and together to reach some kind of consensus, in the sense that there are many things we can disagree on, but there are also a lot of things that we agree on, and that's why we are here today. There are commonalities. For example, we are here because we want benevolent AGI. We are worried about our future and how AI can affect it. For example, we are worried about governance and decentralization. So we have a lot of things we want to build. So, and a lot of things in common. And at the end of the day, I do believe what we want is a positive world in our vision. And sometimes that positive world is more similar than we think, and sometimes just different ways of getting there. So it's all about focusing on that, focusing on respect, seeing how we can conciliate these clashes and different ideas, incentivize them, but also have a space for people to test their things and see, does this work, does this not work? If it doesn't work, we need to surrender ourselves to the evidence and move on.
And can you explain a bit what you mean by incentivization? Because it's a word that gets used a lot, but it has different meanings depending on who's saying it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, incentivization, it's something that is not just tokens. It can be a lot of things. So incentivizations are related with your goals as an individual, are related with tokens as well, because self-interest is very important, and are related with other things. But basically, the important, I think, of incentivization is to try to align the different incentives, let's say, try to align everything, the community incentives with the person's incentives, and that can be done in different ways with the tokens, but also with the community. For example, peer pressure, that is usually seen as a negative thing, can be a really great thing in community and in engaging communities, because, for example, if you are in a community, your behavior is hurting the community, the peer pressure from the rest of the people, the loss of reputation, the loss of the collaboration of the community because of your bad activities will have an effect on you, and it's something that will stop you from putting your self-interest in before end of the community, because in the long run you'll get hurt for doing that. So it's kind of trying to think holistic how the different things and the different mechanisms and systems we are putting in place can lead people to behave, and see if they are really leading us to behave in the way we want, or if they are for example, self-interest and other things that can get in the way and make people behave completely opposite and basically make this system obsolete, I would say.
Thank you. From your experiences in diverse, different groups, decentralized groups, can you comment on what you see coming up again and again as common challenges or strengths?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are many common, especially challenges. I guess we are all still understanding a bit of governance and, for example, challenges related with the token model, because sometimes, especially when the token distribution is not really distributed, the FULs have a lot of power. You really do get a lot of challenges with voting, with people not feeling their opinions are being considered or have any kind of value, because at the end of the day, if you don't have the tokens to back it up, you basically don't have the decision. That's a big challenge. In terms of tooling to do things is also a challenge, tooling for decentralized identities to kind of create reputation mechanisms and also create that kind of sense of community and merit, let's say, but not merit in terms of what you're doing, but in terms of how you're trying to help the community reach a common goal. So those are challenges I do see a lot, and even challenges on like how to get participation from the people, but at the same time have a healthy participation level where we don't have too much spam and too much voting and have voting fatigue. So many challenges.
Thank you, Rafael, for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
And finally, we move on to Carlos. Carlos, are you here?
I'm here.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity and the process particularly. I think it's a really natural and logical and convenient thing to do. So I'm introducing myself. I'm Carlos Borlado. I'm 51 years old and I'm from Spain. I've been devoting last 25 years of my professional career to research and technology. Initially, as a researcher in physics, I studied with Monte Carlo simulations, so that was my approach, hands-on approach to development on AI. Then afterwards, during 15 years, I've been working on the management of dozens of transnational collaborative projects between industry and academia on a lot of topics, as you can imagine, industries, among them AI, in my case, for instance, for robotics or the chemistry industry, as well as more recently, and before the explosion of LLMs, on also the creation of a tool for summarizing large piece of text from the big publisher for the film industry, and also for the legal industry. So last 7 years for me, I've been on co-founding and holding executive positions at a number of blockchain-based startups. Last 4 years, I've been the COO for Elixir Games, which is right now the leading Web3 gaming platform, where I've been in charge of everything from operations to legal, finance, team management, corporate growth, and corporate structure, because actually it's a group of companies in the States, in Europe, offshore, and giving me, of course, a lot of visibility on blockchain-related things. Not only that, I've also participated in and been a co-founder or founder on other initiatives like a decentralized knowledge marketplace, for instance, or decentralized stock market. DAOs, I haven't had direct involvement in DAOs, and seeing some people here, I see that they're much more knowledgeable and experienced on that. But I've just have a lot of interaction with many DAOs in gaming, for instance. I also created a very modest DAO for one of these projects myself, but that's it. So what is my strength? What can I add to this? So I think that I gotta consider myself big specialist on any of the technology topics or functions, legal functions, finance operations, and so on. But I've been close enough for a long time to be able to understand very well and take all these different points that are important in order to create a blueprint and afterwards an actionable blueprint, I would say, to be able to understand all, the context, the restrictions or the requirements and the voices, screen them, contrast them, discuss them, analyze, prioritize, and then build something that integrates the most important views, the most brilliant ideas, or the most qualified voices into something that is very well aligned with the spirit and views and mission of SingularityNet, and of course that is broadly supported by the community. So that's what I can bring. I think there are many experts here. I've heard many people that sound like very skilled, very experienced on DAOs and participative projects and processes and so on. I'm not, but I think that I can understand all the important things that are important to put something together that is sustainable and that is flexible at the same time to adapt to mistakes that we can make in the process or a changing environment that is going to happen.
3 minutes have passed for a while. I'm just
Okay, I'm finished. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Carlos. When you were speaking, I was reflecting on the necessity in managing relationships among different parties. So you said that you've been involved in community engagement in your candidacy submission. You said that you've been involved in community engagement across different stakeholders, and industry and academia and so on. So can you share any lessons that you learned from managing those relationships that could apply to SingularityNet?
Oh, that's a hard one. The context is completely different. I had, for instance, 10, 12, 15 stakeholders that at that time, during that period of time, that were sometimes universities, government, industry, companies, etc. So I think you have to be very objective to show real interest in trying to understand the bottom and the context of each part, and build something that mainly attends to the final objective by letting them know. I think people need to be helped. I don't want to say educated, but they need to be helped to understand that we are working all for the same purpose, and that the end goal of this discussion is not protecting your ideas, egos, etc., but just building together. So finding out which are the important goals and adapting or aligning all actions and opinions toward that goal. I've been also, of course, engaged in community growing in games, for instance, on platforms, but there's a very, very different dynamics. And as I said, I don't feel that I don't have something important to say, considering that there are domain experts that are going to be part of the task force and people there in the council that are going to be much more knowledgeable in the sense of, engaging communities at broad level, large communities. But I think there's an important point here, which is, I think the council is a mediator between groups, not between, a large amount of people, but between different groups. One is a community, but another one is the domain experts. Another one is the governing and executive teams. And probably they will have, quite homogeneous opinions and different between them. So it's an important role as well to put them together as broad masses of opinion.
And how would you aim to engage the community in order to gather that kind of opinion and represent them equally?
As I said, I'm probably not the most knowledgeable person to talk about engagement, broad engagement of community of many members. But now that if you ask, I think making a very, very important effort on highlighting the intermediate steps and goals that we need to achieve in order to create something robust. to raise awareness about the huge importance of this step, not only for SingularityNet, but also for the whole AGI ecosystem. I firmly believe we are in a really disruptive moment, historical moment. And I think the community also needs to be very aware of that. And the council should build those arguments very carefully, so that the community is really, really, aware of the importance of this, and they feel that they have to work for that very noble and very high objective. I'm talking about generalities, not about tools or procedures, but I think that is also important.
Thank you. I know that we're out of time, but I wanted to just ask one last question, which is what strengths do you think that you bring to the Supervisory Council?
Yeah, what I think I can bring here is a very good background and set of skills that I've developed during these 25 years to be able to understand very well which are the interest, which are the requirements from the company, because that starts in SingularityNet. And then all the rest of the community brings their ideas, their support, and their work to that. So it is very important to understand all the voices here, the goals, and what I can do is, on that understanding, create a very robust blueprint that takes into consideration legal things, financial conditions, operational stuff. So everything that really is important to make something that is workable, is actionable in the end. Because it's not just, to have a model of how you represent voices. You in the end have to make a blueprint that is actionable. And that has many legs, has many implications. Legal implications, for instance, the creation of a legal entity, for instance, in which jurisdiction, how the utility or security nature of that token is going to be in the future, depending on that jurisdiction, how you're meant to operate these, how you're going to make the team and incentivize and pay the team, how you proceed with the token, etc. So there are many things. And I think that my main strength, my main contribution there can be to create something according to all that understanding of things that creates something robust.
Thank you very much, Carlos.
Very welcome, and honored to be here.
Shall we open for the final plenary session? Let's start with a focus on the last 4 candidates, Daniel, Guillermo, Rafael, and Carlos. And then after that, after they've had a chance to do the general questions, then we can open out to everybody who's left. Does that sound okay? Perfect. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for the last 4 people who've spoken? I saw a few things coming up in the chat that I didn't know. Oh yes, here we go. So who is the community? Who are you representing and who are you working for?
I mean, I can start, I guess. I was waiting to see if someone would say anything. Yeah, that's a good question, in the sense that should the community just be token holders? At one point, I don't think so, right? Because we are trying to create a technology that goes further and affects more people than just token holders at the beginning. But so the community will be the token holders plus anyone interested in caring about and following the SingularityNet ecosystem and what we are doing here. And I think it's important to consider them and give them a voice, because first, their opinions are important if they are following and they have some knowledge about it. Secondly, that can be what it takes for them to get the token, start getting more involved, start voting as well. So I do think the community is basically anyone who's showing an interest on SingularityNet and wanting to learn more about that. And we can even say that maybe some people that don't have tokens are more involved than people that have tokens but don't really follow any of the things that are being done here on a daily basis. But even those, I think, if they see what we are building as a community, maybe in the future they'll want to participate and be excited by it.
Yeah, like that. From my perspective, I usually take it from like the basic of a theory of the firm that people come together because they can better satisfy their needs by collaborating than doing it on their own. And in that sense, there is not a single purpose, there is multiple purposes, or rather multiple groups with different needs, multiple reasons for coming together. And the community needs to be understood as that system that has multiple groups, because if we only privilege one of them at the expense of the others, we're going to end up in some conflict, or one of those groups is not going to be happy, and then the community gets destabilized. The way it happens, let's say, for platforms like Deliveroo, the drivers are not taking into account only the shareholders, so then the drivers are not giving enough of a voice, then they protest, and no one is getting the Deliveroo services anymore because there is a strike. In the case of SingularityNet, I guess the big part of the initial work is mapping out who these stakeholders are, who are the different groups that need to come together to collaborate, at least the primary stakeholders who are directly involved in the community, to make it a sustainable system. And then who are the secondary stakeholders, or the groups that are impacted by these primary actors that are actually engaging, coming together, so that then we can somehow take their interests into account. But as far as the primary actors, like the basic for most systems in a capitalistic world is you have users, you have builders, and you have investors. That obviously needs to be evaluated, refined, etc. in the concrete case here, but it doesn't apply, is not too far already from what we see in SingularityNet, where we have certain people who want to use the tool, we have certain people who are contributing to building it, the functionalities, etc. And then we have the token holders, etc., who are supporting, somewhat speculating on the overall system. In DAOs, these things tend to be brought together, but it gives us an initial framework to start mapping who these groups are, and then ask who are we leaving behind and who else will be impacted to complete the stakeholder mapping.
For me, the community is all the stakeholders that get engaged naturally. Some of them formally through tokens, and some of them not. Of course, voting processes have to be dealt in a way that those having more tokens have more representation. But it's not just token holders. The community for me is much broader. It's a question of definition. I've seen community in this project defined as that part of users, builders, etc., that are engaged but not directly in the company. Who do I represent, or who the council represents? I think it represents honestly the company. It represents the company to with a very specific mandate to bring together the ideas and the opinions and between all the ecosystem, the company, the users, the builders, and all the stakeholders. So, but I think, yeah, who do you, what was the other question? Could you represent? You made us look.
It's who are you representing and who are you working for?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You are representing actually the company to hear the voices of everyone, but probably not everyone will be equally qualified, and that's something that needs to be, I think, in my opinion, needs to be said very carefully in the blueprint. What type of a decision is to be taken by which groups, maybe with weighted voting rights or things like that, that makes the best thing for the project. It is a project. I mean, the company is paying you, but you are representing the project. Yeah, that is built by the company to hear the community. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Carlos. Guillermo, did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, so going back to the experience, at the end, we can only build from what we have learned doing, at least that's my personal take on it. We are representing, as today, developers, creators, and contributors. The experience of round 2 came on contribution rewards, and we have a really amazing experience, and we brought a result that benefit all of parties involved. And I think it was, we all participated. I see a lot of faces that did, and a good result came from arguments. You can resolve a conflict with just presenting the problems. You need to be objective. So we represent, or at least till now, we are representing the people involved in bringing ideas and onboarding applications on the platform. And then I believe we are representing at global scale the users, because they will be the ones engaging with these tools and the ones that will give us a scale of possible and potential impact with this technology. So we are represented at the end of the line, the user's interest, or community interest that doesn't necessarily have to own a token, a specific token. So I think there are two different subjects.
If I can make a last comment on a second thought on the question of who are you working for, that is interpretable. So you're actually working for the future users and generations that are going to be using the result of this project. So probably that would be more accurate answer to that question.
Thank you. Grace, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I agree with Carlos on that. We're talking about benevolent AI and the threat to all of humanity. So we're working on their behalf. In terms of who the community is, I think that's another thing we need to talk about really straight, because whoever shows up might not be the right people. And as I mentioned before, an ethics committee, are just anybody who's interested the right people to be on your ethics committee? And I don't think, we see people in the community today who are like, I know how to make promotional videos, and let's have the DAO pay us for promotional videos. And we haven't given any thought about, is that what we really need? And it's not a nice conversation to have, but I think we should be discerning in who the members of the community are and how they serve, as Carlos said, the future generations, and how they serve us as a organization. And I think we have not been discerning to date. So that's my answer for that.
Thank you. Jan, did you want to explain why you asked the question in the first place?
Yeah, maybe. I think I heard it resonating already in some of the answers, but maybe I can put it even more sharply. I am quite aware. So first of all, let me state that I'm hugely grateful for the community we have. I wouldn't be here without the community. I'm part of the community. That's the reason. So I'm really grateful for us being here together and also in many other occasions. At the same time, I'm also very much aware that this is just the tiniest of the tiniest subset of people that we are aiming to serve with what we are doing in SingularityNet. So if I'm thinking about creating a blueprint and thinking about decentralization, and we're talking a lot about things like we should ask the community and then the community will tell us what to do. But if I'm thinking about a community, I'm not just thinking of the community of today. I'm also thinking of what the community can be in a year, in 2 years, or 5 years from now. And I think what we are doing is important for everybody, ultimately, for the world, especially the AI perspective and also the governance perspective. So I think it's very important to listen. I think our current community has a huge opportunity to put their mark on what we're doing. But I would like to go beyond that and not just think about the people who are currently in the group, but I think there are a lot of people out there who just haven't ever heard about us, but could be, would be, and probably, maybe in many cases, will be very important to us, our communication, community organization, and hopefully will also be part of our future community. And that's also the people I would like this blueprint to be for.
Completely agree.
Would any of the other speakers, I think we could open out to everybody now. Would any of the other speakers like to comment on that, or anything else about the blueprint and the Supervisory Council? If anybody would like to comment on the previous question about who the community is, then please go ahead. Otherwise, I'll have other questions too, or anyone else can ask some as well.
Yeah, I would like to comment. So yeah, I think Jan's point is very, very spot on. So we have to think also about the future. But I think a community that comes together now has a very difficult time to see in the future and know exactly what should be done, what should be in the blueprint. So I think Grace also mentioned that it's very important to have like circles. So like I work a lot with agile development. So like there you have like a framework on how things are proceeding. You have your rituals. And I think these things are important because over time, the blueprint might also have to change. So like I think it's very important to incorporate this from the get-go. And yeah, of course we're working now. Like the optimal thing is to appeal now to the token holders, right? I mean the vote is about the tokens, but I think in the long run it's also very important to see how will everybody else who comes in, who has probably a very different point of view than the current community, how can they get a fair part in the community? And if now the OGs, the ones which are there already, will dominate this in the long run, then it would also be a bad design, because yeah, in the end we should make it fair for everybody, even if they were here early. Okay, they will have an advantage, but I don't think it should be permanent forever. That are my thoughts about this.
Yeah, I would like to jump off the back of that. I think Robin's point is great, and how the term is designed as 6 months really gives the opportunity to contribute without this, without being directly, it doesn't reflect in, say, the best interests of the people on the Supervisory Council. But yeah, I would also like to consider what Jan was saying. I think is really relevant, that the community, I think we are working for the foundation in a way. I mean, the money's coming from the foundation. That's where the Supervisory Council gets their allocation of the phase 2 funding. However, I really agree that the community is the people who are aligned with the mission of SingularityNet, both the people that are already here, the people that don't know about the mission yet, and also the people that have dropped off, who perhaps were part of the community some years ago, but are not now. I think it's really important to kind of integrate the views and opinions of these diverse stakeholders, and to kind of really hear everyone's expectations of those.
Thank you. If there, I have one last question. There's not going to be a lot of time really to go very deeply into it, because we're reaching the close of the session, but I did want to ask, what qualities are most important to you in the other Supervisory Council members who you're going to be working with?
I can start with this one. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Esther, am I included in the 4 candidates here?
I think we've opened out to everybody now.
Oh, okay.
If that's okay with the other candidates, we're reaching the end, so I would open the floor to everyone now and just discuss.
Sorry about that, Carlos. One of the biggest attributes I'm hopeful for in these candidates is that they do have their own opinions and perspectives, but they don't allow those to trump what the community's perspective is. And so being able to actually listen to the community and be open-minded and listen to what the influence that's out there, and not allowing their own internal perspectives to cloud their judgment.
I'm going to be a bit more prosaic, I think. In my case, it's very clear because I know what I can provide and what I miss. And what I miss is someone with real hands-on experience for a long time, and a good mindset, reasonable mindset to be able to deal with tools and the procedures of the DAO. That's my main weak, probably my main weakness, and therefore that's what I would rather see strongly represented in the council.
People with the hands up, go, please.
Okay, so I think we can, personally, I can resume it with one word, that it's common sense. At the end, we build things to be straight, solid, and durable. You know, things are pretty simple and straightforward of what we need on a community. And common sense involves respect, involves a lot of things that build a strong community towards building great tools. And that way we will impact a global community represented by users all around. So at the end, we need the people we will be working with, just one of the most important aspects of life, that it's, yeah, I think common sense bring them all these qualities or potential skills together. You can be very powerful with mathematics, but if you don't have common sense towards a common goal, it's just, we can use a calculator, you know. So at the end, we're building something that will impact. And so it's that. Sorry.
Thank you, Guillermo. Grace, did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I think a little bit like what Guillermo was saying, but I would say ethics. We're talking about ethical AI, and I'd like people to have a strong ethical foundation, which is going to mean that we're going to disagree because ethics are difficult. So people who can disagree in an amicable way and who have a strong grounding in their own ethics, because we need to discuss these things. And I think this is a big problem with the elections too, because you're going to vote for the people who you think are the best, but what if the three of us end up being really similar to one another? I'd like to have people with strong ethical foundations, but that each of the three comes from a very different perspective. So that's me.
Can I also say something? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's very important. I think I would like to see people that are open-minded, but also open to collaborate. And when I say open-minded, for sure, we all have our visions and we all have our ideas and we all have our unique life experiences. And as Grace pointed out, they can be very similar. So it's really important we do the effort to try to hear from as many different people as we can and try to consider that, have discussions about those topics, and upgrade our ideas with those discussions. So I think people that, you know, have that open-mindedness and will take the initiative to question their own knowledge, and that are also open to discussion, collaboration, and continuous improvement.
For me, it's mostly about holding paradoxes. There is a lot of different polarities to navigate. We need to go towards decentralization, and for that, we'll have to make some decisions in a centralized manner. We need to think about the short term, so we'll have to focus about some short term, about the long term. So some short term low-hanging fruit will need to be addressed. And how can we hold these multiple needs together instead of being welded to a single ideology or a single way of doing things, but look at the nitty-gritty details and find what are the right balances or compromises or otherwise solutions that don't necessarily force us to pick a side, but we can find a way to transcend the paradoxes. But being able to hold them is absolutely fundamental for the conversations we're going to have.
Yeah, I can go now. The other skills that I'm looking forward to interacting with in the Supervisory Council I bring imagination, applied imagination, and this often works well with collaborations with highly technical people where there are constraints, and within this field of constraints there is imaginative possibility. If you tell someone draw something, a totally open question, people are often catatonic. They don't know what to do. However, if you give them a defined frame to work within, people find it a lot easier. So this is how I see imagination and experience from these technical expertise kinds of melding in the same way, I guess, as my role as full-in residence at CLEA, the Transdisciplinary Center in Brussels. This is what I do here, to take scientific theory and to apply it into experiential scenarios. So this is what I'm looking forward to, along with those discussions, like really heavyweight thinking discussions. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other comments about that question? I believe that Curtis asked whether he could ask a question of me and Jan in the chat. Would you like to go ahead, Curtis?
Yeah. For everybody here to go back to one of Felix's questions, how do we leverage the candidates that were not accepted? So everybody besides the three. And I know there's a mention of the experts. There's a lot of people here that are valuable and have value. Can we get into a brief of what can those candidates who didn't make it, what can they do? How can they contribute and participate within those contexts, like the experts and the guilds, potentially, whatever you guys suggest? How do we engage with all these? I see a lot of good people here that bring a lot to the table. How do we keep us engaged?
I think that's a great question, because I really enjoyed Felix's idea of the circles, and I think that and it really prompted me to think about the process itself, because we used a very kind of traditional model here, didn't we? We used the kind of traditional election model, and it has its strengths and it has its drawbacks, and part of that is just owing to time, that we needed to get this done quite quickly because we want to start soon on the decentralization journey, as soon as possible. But I think that it would be really valuable to think about alternative models for the future, and how they could work and how not to lose talent, because the win-lose situation does mean that you can lose people. With regard to the people who are staying here, I would say, or the people who don't become council members, I would say that they should certainly continue to engage with the communities online, and reach out directly to the people who are working on the council, and if they would like to be part of the expert group, then put in the application for the expert group, because in addition to having the stable expert group positions, there may be scope to collaborate in other ways. So we're not inflexible in the sense that we've defined all these roles and then that's the only people who are going to work on the blueprint. No, that would be ridiculous. It would be such a waste of talent. So I think that we should keep these conversations open and try to find space for people to contribute if they want to.
Yeah, I think I have very little to add to that. Maybe few things. I think I've promised a few times along the lines that this is not just something for the task force, but it's something that the community will be consulted on as well. And actually, I think this is a very important responsibility of the elected Supervisory Council to facilitate that communication with the community, which includes of course, also anybody who has applied for Supervisory Council member and has not been selected or elected. From a very pragmatic point of view, Grace already mentioned it, would be so easy to create another council with voluntary people and say, well, congratulations, you're allowed to voluntarily spend your time on this. Which is still a great thing and might still also be useful and gratifying, etc. There's also a budget that the Supervisory Council can spend on a number of things. So maybe there's some room for some of you that will not be elected to do still some useful work. So the expert group is more like a structural thing. But I can imagine really pragmatically that there's some of you that might not get elected that could do some specific bounded thing and even get compensated for that in some tokens. So that's another perspective. And I think you mentioned the expert group. I would like also to take this opportunity to everybody who is watching this video. The expert group is still open. So it will remain open at least until after the Supervisory Council has been elected. And after that, with the new Supervisory Council, we'll consider what the process is and who we will select in the expert group based on the expertise that we still need to add to the group that we already have. So for those of you who have only submitted candidacy to Supervisory Council group, please feel free still to also add your proposal to the expert groups. And yeah, it's a wide diversity of things that we can do and are already doing in SingularityNet. We have all the ambassador groups. We have a lot of things going on, deep funding, and it's expanding. And with the Supervisory Council and the blueprint, more things will emerge. Also, I would like to point out that 6 months is not a long period, and it's a challenge to get that blueprint done, especially taking into account all kinds of feedback loops and inclusion of other people's voices, etc. So it's a challenge, but it also means that should we make it within 6 months, and there's urgency here, right? So there's a reason why we can't take forever with this blueprint. But I'm pretty sure that after that blueprint period, there's even more opportunities for any of you to become engaged. And actually, the ones that get elected will not be re-elected for after that phase. So there's a huge opportunity, I think, for everybody here to contribute in the way that best suits your character and capabilities and personal desires. I see Guillermo holding his hand up. I think that's a cue for me to stop talking.
Okay, Jan. No, I just wanna thank you guys. As I've mentioned on my introduction, this has been an amazing experience for all creators. It's amazing to read so deep, you know, on Felix's brain in simple words on the comments. All the ride for me is an amazing experience, but still my first and mandatory responsibility is my kid, and here is 8 a.m. and I have to cook and drop him at school. So that's the future users of our endeavor. So I have to go. So it was great to be part of this. Again, let's see you guys later.
Thank you, Guillermo. It was great to meet you. Thank you for being here.
See you guys later. My pleasure.
Given that this project is something that I think I would bet that most of us or all of us are genuinely interested in following in the future. I'm sure that many of us are going to be following very actively, whether or not we are involved in any of these particular actions, and very willing to contribute to as much as possible as in our respective circumstances. So congratulations for this, guys. Thanks for opening this opportunity.
Thank you, Carlos. Thanks for being here. We have had two people today who were unable to make a live appearance. I'm happy to introduce Ismael's contribution by video.
Hello everyone, my name is Ismael and I am absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to join the Supervisory Council at SingularityNet. Today I want to introduce myself, share my unwavering passion for AI, SingularityNet and the quest for a more sustainable and ethical AI, and discuss my unique journey that equips me to play a key role in this transformative journey. For the past 2 years, I have been actively involved with SingularityNet. What started as an investment for me quickly evolved into a deep commitment. I've immersed myself in this incredible journey by attending conferences, closely following developments on LinkedIn and the official website, and actively promoting SingularityNet's growth and significance within my network. Now, as we look towards the future, what is my vision for the decentralization process of SingularityNet? It's quite clear to me. I envision SingularityNet evolving into a truly global and community-driven platform for artificial general intelligence. In this vision, decision-making power is distributed among a diverse and engaged community of stakeholders. So to me, transparency, fairness, and inclusivity are paramount in this decentralized model. SingularityNet should stand as a beacon for open governance in the AI space, a place where individuals from all backgrounds actively participate in shaping the direction of AGI development. Now, how do I intend to integrate my unique experiences into the oversight and strategic development of SingularityNet's decentralized governance? My diverse roles in luxury hospitality management, finance, tech, and private security have cultivated a multifaceted perspective. In luxury hospitality, I've learned the art of delivering exceptional experiences, which translates into ensuring SingularityNet's community has the best possible journey. In finance, I've cultivated a keen understanding of financial systems, which is invaluable for ensuring the platform's sustainability. My tech background has honed my problem-solving skills, and private security has instilled a deep commitment to safeguarding our ecosystem. You know, balancing investors and communities' interest is crucial to me. Having started as an investor, I understand the importance of ensuring returns. But as I transition into an active community role, I see the broader picture, and my approach involves transparency, open dialogue, and finding common grounds. In situations of conflict, I believe in seeking win-to-win solutions that benefits both investors and the broader community. Addressing ethical dilemmas is a central point in my vision. So let me illustrate. For example, let's suppose that SingularityNet faces a decision on data privacy. As we're decentralized, it's imperative to consider both individual privacy and the collective good, right? So my approach will involve an inclusive dialogue, transparent impact assessments, and a commitment to upholding ethical standards that serve the best interest of all stakeholders. Thank you for considering me for the Supervisory Council. I believe that by embracing diversity, finding common grounds, and upholding ethical principles, we can work together to make SingularityNet a model of decentralized governance that reflects our collective commitment to the future of AI.
Hello everyone, and thank you very much for having me. First of all, I would like to rush into it and explain why I'm recording this in a non-standard format. Because I was recently offered the mission to collaborate with one of SingularityNet's spin-offs, which will be involved in promoting Desdemona the robot as a global pop star, which I thought that would be a conflict of interest between my application as a Supervisory Council member and my future position. However, working as a spin-off project has been concluded as not being a conflict of interest with this position. So I would like to continue my application, and Esther has provided me the opportunity to record this video in this way in order to show you who I am and how I think. And this is what I'm going to do in a relatively short and concise way about decentralized governance and governance in general. First of all, my name is Mihai Bărbulescu and I am applying for the Community DAO Supervisory Council. I would like to start off with what governance is. Governance sets the boundaries within which people operate. Simply put, governance means the process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented. For governance to exist, decision making needs to happen. And in the landscape of decentralized governance, we need to set a system of co-responsibility. That's the main purpose. Simply put, decentralization means restructuring or reorganizing of authority so that there is a system of co-responsibility. For decentralized governance to exist, decentralized decision making is the key element to building the first version of a decentralization blueprint. Some of the underlying challenges that we are going to face are how decisions should be made, who should be involved in the decisions, how to structure the way that such decisions are made, how to solve the problems of reputation versus diversity of ideas, how to preserve the autonomy and security of the individual while protecting the interests of the whole, how to address stakeholder cognitive biases tending towards optimization of short-term gains while not sacrificing long-term vision and innovation, quote-unquote see Project Catalyst nowadays and how the community is reacting it, and how to decentralize without some kind of fatal flaw. Having this said, plutocracy does not equal a DAO. A plutocracy is an elite or ruling class whose power derives from their wealth. For example, officials were drawn from the new plutocracy. That's a way of using the term. Going further, there is no unified definition of a DAO. Similarly to the term AGI, there is currently no unified definition of DAO, even among DAO and DAO builders. Now, as an example, and based on the Supervisory Council report issued last year, a DAO is a system in which storage, transaction of value, and notary voting functions can be designed, organized, recorded, and archived, and where data and actions are recorded and autonomously executed in a decentralized way. My thinking is that we need to ideate, experiment, and implement alternative decision-making processes. What can be done to effectively ideate, experiment, and implement alternative decision-making processes should be our main focus. For example, voting data made available needs to be rich enough to run simulations of outcomes using alternative models like quadratic, convention, etc. The first steps as a Supervisory Council member that I would like to take is to poll the community for commenting on the mechanisms and rules by which governance has been done up to now, and then identify voting data points used and stored in past decision-making processes. For the purpose to assist in building the first version of the decentralization blueprint while introducing new voting points that could facilitate future simulations of known voting models based on metrics surrounding core values and community sentiment. Thank you very much. This is the way I think and this is who I am. And now I would like to go directly to the community questions, which I have received from Esther, and I will kick those off with the first one. With your experience incubating both Simulacrum DAO and Veterinary DAO, can you share specific challenges you faced in pushing for decentralized community-owned models and how these experiences might influence your approach within the Singularity Net Decentralization Task Force? Well, first of all, I would like to say that based on my transparent skin in the game, I cannot say that these two DAOs are at the moment active, as they're still in a funding incubation phase. However, I can observe the following in these two very distinct industries during our efforts so far. In the gaming industry, for Simulacrum DAO, most mentalities are surrounded around indie development, which means that game developers are pretty much isolated even if they need a community-driven approach for progress. Hence the huge need for decentralization, especially when it comes to the metaverse, which absolutely needs to be a collaborative contribution-based mission. As for the veterinary industry, I have observed that when it comes to veterinary triage as a service for pet owners, the vision incubated by Veterinary DAO revolves around freelancing. Take for example BetterHelp, a well-known website which aims to decentralize psychotherapy. We wish to do the same in the animal care medical industry. I think that approaching these industries in a way that emphasizes collaboration, mutual support and ownership of one's work, for example, offering the feeling that you work for yourself in a true entrepreneurial spirit, might be key to decentralization. And also, as a conclusion for this question, I believe that ownership of one's outcome of activity is most likely a key motivation and driver of co-responsibility. Going further to the next question, you have participated in several decentralized communities. What are the key learnings you've gathered about decentralized coordination and leadership? Well, to start off on this question, decentralized coordination and leadership requires a sense of co-responsibility, as I also said earlier, and having skin in the game is a fair provider of dopamine, but that is not where it all ends and is not an end-all meets-all solution to coordination. Tooling is an important aspect. However, as humans, we strive best when we are part of a tribe. And as with every tribe, leadership is important. One of the key aspects that I would like to bring to the SingularityNet Community DAO is a tight connection between leadership and community. We need less bosses, more leaders. We need to have people that show action and not just vision. Second, neuromarketing. Third question and last, neuromarketing is an intriguing skill in your profile. Can you tell us what that means and its role in developing a decentralized community? Well, while neuromarketing is primarily associated with traditional marketing practices, it can play a role in developing a decentralized community in several ways. For example, understanding community members' needs and desires might be one key thing. Effective messaging and communication might be another. User experience optimization. What I would like to add is behavioral economics insights, as I said, with the voting parameters and the way that these have been interpreted. Trusting and branding, which is obviously a very important key aspect. I mean, hype can bring you one sale, but you need trust to build a community. And then there's feedback and iteration. Having this said, I would like to thank you very much for your time and for your patience, and hope to build a decentralization blueprint alongside you. Thank you.
In any case, everybody here, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, for spending your time, for sharing your insights. It's an amazing group of people. It was an amazing group of people yesterday, but today I'm also really, really impressed. And I'm absolutely convinced, even with the mechanics of voting that we all know are not perfect, with this group of people, basically we can't go wrong. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. And yeah, I agree. I do think it's very exciting. I've been here yesterday and we see a lot of ideas. So I just hope that anyone who gets elected tries to reach out to these people, get the ideas into the blueprint. And yeah, that's the only thing I wanted to say. Thank you.
I, for one, have really enjoyed speaking to everybody today, and you handled some very hard questions quite well, extremely well. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure how I would have reacted to some of my own questions. So well done, and I think you really turned up and showed well today. So I wish you all the best of luck in your candidacies.